Gonna try to bring you this video on my Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus. It takes better video quality than the GoPro, and it's a little bit easier for me to carry it around. Just ignore all the background noise. Not much I can do about it. I am working outside, so. My clip-ons are supposed to be here tomorrow, so I'm going to show you what it takes to get that triple tree off, pull your bars off. This is pretty much the same procedure for any street bike with this style clip-ons, but specifically the Gen 5. Going to see how the clip-ons mount up, where we'll have to drill holes for the factory buttons and all that stuff, and what tools you'll need to get the triple off. Now I've already replaced the triple clamp, so it's going to be a hair bit easier for me. First thing we're going to do is remove the stabilizer, which you are going to need something that you might not have. A T40 security bit. When you're pulling it off, just be careful with your little components that you have underneath it so that they don't drop down in there. I have an extra little spacer because I did lower the front end of the bike a little bit, so this just keeps it from hitting that. The other side on mine is going to be an Allen because, again, I replaced the triple already. Pretty much for the rest of all this, a hex bit set is going to come in real handy. You know, you can use Allen keys obviously to get all these bolts off, but all the bolts we need to get off for the clip-ons are all going to be hex drive. Most of them are either going to be a 5mm or a 6mm. Once those two bolts are off, the stabilizer will be free. We're going to pop this little plastic clamp off and unplug it from the sensor right here. So now we can get this out of the way. Next up for me is going to be taking out my Pod 300 and then taking out the bracket for the brake reservoir fluid, just so we can move that out of the way as well. One thing to keep in mind with clip-ons is typically you're going to lose your spot where your brake reservoir mounts. A lot of times you're going to either have to fab up or get some kind of bracket. Probably the easiest way to do it is to run a bracket right from the top bolt of your brake master and then just bend it in accordance. We may get lucky bending the factory bracket. It may reach. Looking at it now, I don't think it will, so gonna have to probably make something up. The Bonamici triple actually does come with a hole right here, so you can actually run a bracket directly off the triple for the reservoir too. Now everything's pretty much out of the way, so we can go ahead and start getting the top triple off. Again, if you got the factory triple, obviously these bolts are going to be in different locations and maybe different size, but it's all going to come apart the same way. Now the big nut right in the middle, it's an oddball size, but a big socket will get it off. So it's a 36mm and a breaker bar. I am going to include all the torque specs for the Gen 5 here as well. Definitely refer to your service manual everything we are loosening is going to be torqued down. Literally every bolt here will be retorqued to factory specs. And now at this point the top triple is completely ready to come off. Not that that will be easy, but a little working back and forth and you will get it off. And then usually right when you get to the top, that's where it's going to be the hardest. And pop. You're not going to be able to remove the factory triple completely unless you go through and cut off your security head bolts on the underneath of your triple like I've done here already. Luckily with the Bonamichis, it's just bolted on. So I am going to take it off completely so I don't even have to mess with this being in the way at all. The bars, pretty straightforward. Going to loosen that bolt, slide them off, take all the controls off, get everything off of the factory bars and swapped over to the clip-ons. So when the clip-ons get here tomorrow, we'll start back up. We'll see how it goes. Got the Vortex clip-ons in today. Just want to show you real quick what comes in the box. Got your 2 bars, your 2 clip-ons, some stickers, and your end caps. Now we got to do some measuring so we can drill the spots in the bars where we need to put them. And then we're going to start getting all this stuff on the bike. Once those are on, the good part is we can go ahead and reinstall the triple, because then we'll be able to work on the bars and all that, you know, by taking them on and off the bike, which is pretty much the best part about having clip-ons, the adjustability and the ease of replacement. Start getting everything buttoned back up here, and then I'll show you how all of this stuff, all the controls and everything, will go back on the new bars. Probably the hardest part of the whole install is reinstalling the triple once you've had it off, because everything kind of shifts around and moves around, and it's not the easiest thing to get back on, but I'll show you how I do it here. Rubber mallet is going to come in handy, but what I found last time is just by gripping the front wheel and kind of shifting your weight around usually helps. And then you'll kind of feel once it starts to get into its place. And we're just tapping really, really lightly. Also want to make sure before you get it all the way set on that all your cables are still in the direction of where they're going to be routed. And then you'll know when it's all the way seated, because it's not going to go down any further. That's it. Now we can go ahead and put the stem nut back on. Remember to clean off our threads here so there's no junk in there. It still actually looks like it's got some Loctite on it. And torque spec in the service manual for the Gen 5 ZX10R is 59 foot-pounds. I'm not going to torque anything down until more towards the end, once we get everything kind of settled back into where it's going to be. And again, right now we're just kind of mocking everything up, so nothing needs to be super tight at all. Just tight enough not to move around too much. And as a starting point, I'm just going to go in parallel with the bolt for the triple, so that they're both kind of in the same spot. I have a feeling that's about probably where they're going to end up. It's a lot of fitment that will need to be done, because these bars are going to be in a pretty different spot from where they were. So we're going to have to check, you know, clearance with the fairings and how close they get to the tank from full tilt on both sides. So definitely some patience that's going to need to be had. But the first thing we have to do is figure out where we're going to put the bar so we know where to drill our holes. And I think where I got it is pretty much perfect. I'm just looking at the length right now. So you can see, I'm just kind of lining up and seeing about how much on the back side is going to be sticking out. $15 millimeters. Alright, 15 millimeters. So I'm going to mark the bar there so I know exactly where our starting point is here. Of course, I can't find my painter's tape, so just grab the first thing I found that's sticky, which is heat tape. Alright, now we know how much bar we have to actually work with. Everything else we're going to be measuring from this end forward. So we got our factory bars here. And to show you what I mean. So now we know how much bar we have to work with. Everything else we're going to be measuring from the end. So to this hole from the end, how far it is. Same deal here. And before we drill any holes, we'll put it back on the bike, put the throttle on, make sure it is exactly where we want it. But that's how we're going to measure out. We need on this bar, we're going to need 2 holes. One underneath for the throttle, one on top for the switch. On the left side, luckily it's only 1 hole for the switches on that side. So I'm going to mark that up now and then we'll be back. I got 1 hole drilled up for the left side, which only has the 1 hole. So I figured I'd start with that side and make sure. The other sides are going to be a little bit more difficult because of the orientation of the holes. We have to make sure we kind of get it right the first time. This time we're going to make sure the switch will go in there and that the hole is going to be big enough. So let's check it out. Here's the peg I'm talking about. It fits. Make sure it's going to give us enough room. Yep. So this side pretty much ready. And this is why we don't tighten the bars up yet. We can move everything around still. And we gotta double check and make sure that we got enough room for our grip. Perfect. I wanted to leave about 2 millimeters at the very end, so that should work out perfect. These housings are plastic, so they don't need to be super tight, which is why I wanted to drill the hole so that it has something to stay on and not worry about having to crank them down so that it didn't move and potentially break it. Again, nothing's getting tightened down yet because obviously we still have to make a ton of adjustments. Now the other side, which is going to be a little bit more difficult. Here's the little drill bit, basically to get that pilot hole started. And see, this is what you got to be careful of because you got to go very straight or else you will get a nick. I mean, luckily this is all going to get covered up. Plus we still have to go to the bigger size, which I'm about to do right now. So see, this hole's all set, nice and big. Oh, and I need to check, I think the other hole might be smaller. And yeah, the hole for the throttle is actually smaller than the other holes, so good thing I checked real quick. Now obviously the proper way to do this is you put this in a vise. If you have a drill press, great, then you're all set. Otherwise you'd put this in a vise and just take your time. If you take your time, the bars are easy to drill. See? Just take your time. And we got our holes hopefully in the right spot. As you can see, they're at like a different angle. From here to this hole is 1 1/4 inch, but you have to rotate it back this way. Right now I did it by eye. Again, good thing is if we absolutely had to, we can drill another hole, but hopefully this is right where it needs to be. So there's your little nub. So this part we can assemble for test fitting. Obviously it's gonna have to come back off so we can put our throttle cables back in there just to make sure the switch is in the correct position. Let's go check it out. Oh boy, we got lucky. We got really lucky. It's perfect. Got as perfect as I could hope for. Again, not super tight on these. It's just plastic. Mounting it with the arrow up because apparently it makes a difference on these. I haven't got a bracket yet, but I'm gonna order a bracket so I can just put it at this top bolt, bend it, and go right to the reservoir. But for right now, we'll just have it hanging there. Unfortunately, already I can kind of tell we might have a problem with the reservoir, so we may end up having to move it anyway. But let me get this bar tightened up where it's gonna be, which is pretty much right about there. Something kind of like that. So outside of the brake master cylinder, so far everything's gone pretty good and to plan. We have good clearance everywhere else. This is really the only issue here. So unfortunately, I don't think there's any way around not completely relocating it. Which is not a horrible thing, it's not gonna work in this location. No, that's not gonna work either. Alright, see? So now this is where fitting is gonna come into play. So I'm probably gonna have to do is rotate the bar quite a bit more and keep playing with it until we got good clearance everywhere. So I'm gonna do that and we'll be back. After a whole lot of adjusting, everything does clear now, except for the master. Does touch a little bit at the top, but that's not where it's gonna be yet. Everything else clears perfectly. What I had to do was relocate the throttle to be underneath the master cylinder. So I'm gonna have to readjust it, get it back to where it feels good. I'm probably gonna have to completely take this master off, mount it over here somewhere where, like I said, there is actually a hole back here on the Bonamici triple to mount one. I mean, it's just barely there. I could probably get a zip tie on it for right now just to be able to test drive it. We'll see. I'll get to that point. Now it's time to start torquing everything down. So these are all still pretty loose. Gonna start with the center nut. And one more click, make sure. Yep. Alright, so that's torqued down. And just to show you what I had done was I went to the service manual and looked everything up beforehand so I would have it. These are just some measurements that I was working on, but these are going to be your torque specs. 18 foot-pounds for the clip-ons, 59 foot-pounds for the stem nut, and 15 foot-pounds for the top triple. So the top triple clamp bolts, 15 foot-pounds. Now the clip-ons, 18 foot-pounds. 18 foot-pounds. Going back and forth. I'm not going to go straight to torque. You know, we got to go back and forth so it's got even pressure. That's 18. There's 18. And then we just double check them. Or else you'll be here all day. Perfect. Alright, now on the other side. those are done. Now we just gotta do the tops. And I don't know what the clamp force is on those, but we're gonna do 15 foot-pounds. Now we just got to put the stabilizer back on, put this grip on, install the caps, and figure out what we're going to do with the brake reservoir. Outside of that, she's pretty much done. Test driving the new clip-ons. Still haven't mounted the brake reservoir yet. I did order the driven universal bracket. Seems to be the bracket of choice. Right now I got a little zip tie on there holding it where I want it, and it does clear ever so lightly. Very, very close, but let's see how this feels. My buddy Frankie's shop. So yeah, it definitely feels a lot different. Like, holy sh**. Amazing what just a couple degrees here and there and repositioning of the bars can change the whole feel of the bike. Alright, so I want to mention before I forget, when you got the triple clamp off, I forgot to mention it when I was making the video. It's a good time to check your steering stem nut there. There's a special tool to tighten it. Well, it's basically a C-spanner wrench. You can use a flathead screwdriver and a hammer. I don't particularly recommend it, but it is doable. A lot of times you'll find that nut will be a little bit loose, and tightening it up a little bit, in my opinion, it helps the steering feel a lot better. Mine was quite a bit loose. I turned it probably about a quarter turn and then retightened the locking nut that's on top. My girlfriend told me, oh, a nice R1, that the triple clamp looks like a Jeep Liberty grill. So that's all I notice every time I look at it now. So tell me, what do you think? Look like the front of a Jeep Liberty? Yeah, I can't believe how much more comfortable the bars are. The only thing is they're very wide right now, so I may have to bring them in a bit more, only because I can see the tucked position. They're pretty wide. It might actually help with my clearance issues over here as well. Gonna head back home, make a couple adjustments, and then probably come back out for one more ride. Definitely got to pull the bars in a little bit. They just feel a little too wide right now. I went ahead and readjusted the bars, and because I readjusted them, I was able to put the throttle back the proper way, which honestly probably doesn't matter at all, but I prefer to have the cables routed the way they're supposed to be. Yeah, that feels a lot better. I don't know if you guys can tell in the video about the angle, but that feels a lot better. What I would recommend if you are going to do clip-ons on this particular motorcycle is have some brake hose and a bracket ready at the same time, just so you don't, you can do everything at once. You're definitely going to need it, most likely. You're definitely most likely going to need it. Alright guys, so if this video helped you at all, please drop a like down below. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. Otherwise, until my next video, you guys know what to do. Stay safe. Peace.